Welcome to the Kennedy Report. I'm Kennedy Hall. Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano, if you would pronounce it properly, the emphasis is on the last syllable, has come out in support of Giorgia Meloni, who is the newly elected Prime Minister of Italy. Now, as Vigano says, as we'll look at in his document, she is the Prime Minister in potentiality. And what does that mean? Well, that means that in Italian politics, which is impossible to understand even for most Italians, there's an election, and then they also have to form a government. This is how parliamentary politics tend to work, but Italian politics can be particularly unstable, hence why they've had 500,000 new prime ministers and presidents in the last 50 years. But this is a big deal. It represents as we'll see in his letter, sort of a real pushback against the globalist World Economic Forum, WHO, the whole thing. A real pushback against that by the Italian people, who I know as an Italian citizen, as someone who speaks Italian fluently, having lived there for a time as a child, coming from a Italian immigrant mother. I think my mom's actually in Italy right now visiting family. I do know the Italian people are a very traditional people in their bones, very old culture, obviously historically very Christian. So I'm not really surprised there's been a pushback. But I think for a lot of the world, watching what happened in the last couple of years with the sort of health regime that was in place in Italy, I think people sort of were taken by surprise by this. I think they had thought that the globalist World Economic Forum thing was just a given, when I knew in reality that it wasn't. Okay. First, like this video, subscribe to this channel, click the links in the description to see how you can support us. Thank you to everyone who has supported us thus far, and I really appreciate it. Again, click the notification bell, see when we go live. I'm pre-recording this, but when it's live to you. So thank you very much for all your support from all of the team here at the Kennedy Report. We couldn't do it without you. Okay, so I'm going to open up this tab here real quick. And we're going to look at Archbishop Vigano's letter. So here is his letter. The Italian people have rejected globalism. Now Prime Minister Meloni must deliver. And I'll make this a little bit bigger here so we can see. It's long. Vigano obviously is quite prolific in his writing. We can't go through all of it. So I'm just going to, I did a Control F search of her name so we can see what he actually has to say about her. There's a lot of other stuff in here, but I think we'll go to the meat and potatoes. And then I'm going to play a quick video that's been going around on Twitter, where people are basically saying she seems to be just a globalist shill. And I'm going to push back on that a little bit. This doesn't mean she doesn't, this doesn't mean she's infallible. It doesn't mean that she doesn't have potential errors. I mean, she's a politician. Politicians are political. They can do, unfortunate things. But nonetheless, I think that she's still worth trusting, and I'll explain why. Okay, so here is Archbishop Vigano. The opening lead is, we know that today's politicians do not have the gift of honoring the commitments they have made to their electorate. Can we reasonably think that Giorgia Meloni will want to review her pro-globalist positions, returning to the role of being a true right-wing alternative to the woke left? Okay. Good. So he talks about her here. He says, many of the votes lost by the PD, one of the parties in Italy, into Fratelli d'Italia. And also, is Pope Francis a fan of the Fratelli d'Italia? I would think so, because he says, after all, that we're fratelli tutti. But anyway, and this further confirms the expectations of those who have chosen the right wing of Giorgia Meloni, not for what it is, but for what it can potentially be. I think that's exactly correct. Not for what she has said it will do, but for what everyone actually expects her to do. They voted for Meloni to defend those sound basic principles of civil coexistence, palely inspired by the social doctrine of the Catholic Church, but which Italians are not willing to give up. Protection of the natural family, respect for life, security of the fight against illegal immigration, and end to gender and LGBT indoctrination for minors, freedom of enterprise, the presence of the state in strategic assets, a greater weight in the European affairs, and, God willing, the exit from the euro and the return to national sovereignty. In short, Meloni is expected to behave like the leader of a moderate right-wing party. This is true. That's really all she's pushing. Tendentially conservative, moderately sovereigntist, nothing extreme. Certainly not extreme right, in spite of the alarmist proclamations of the left, but at last not aligned with a NATO-prone Atlanticism or the suicidal Europeanism that characterized the action of the Draghi government, nor elected out of ideological fury against the destruction of civilization, culture, religion, and the identity of the Italian people. This is extremely important here. Okay, I'm going to hone in on this. Europeans, this is hard for us to understand outside of Europe. Europeans have an identity, and it's not just based on a constitution. It's much deeper than that. Europeans have an identity that is, in some ways, even older than Catholicism. Romans are Roman. The countries of Europe are basically the borders of various clans and bloodlines. The French are Franks. Okay, they're Gauls. The English are Anglo-Saxons. This is why, we have Saxony and so forth. Scandinavia, Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, not Finland, is an ethnic group. And within there, different sort of vestiges of familial kingdoms and so forth. In Germany, they are Bavarian. They are, of the Cimbri tribe and so forth going back. They are Vandals and so forth in parts of Spain. These are different ethnic groups who are more ancient than even the Catholic Church. So when an Italian says, I am an Italian, he's not just appealing to an idea. He's appealing to his blood. He's appealing to, everyone talks about being indigenous. Europeans are as indigenous can be. They are native to Europe. They have been there since the dawn of time. They are more ancient than we can imagine. And therefore, their history is built into them in a way that is very difficult for North Americans to understand. And I would argue even different than sort of indigenous cultures in North America, because not only did they migrate to Europe, but they also built a civilization. They have written history. It's a big deal. So in any case, it is an important thing for an Italian to be Italian. This idea of make America great again sounds good, but even there, it's based on sort of ethereal principles rather than an actual ethnic identity. And ethnicity is extremely strong. I mean, look at the sway that Zionism has over the Jewish diaspora, for example, because it appeals to ethnicity. This is the same thing with Italian people. They are hyper nationalist in their veins because they are the vestige of the Roman Empire. They have a history that is ancient as anything. So I think he nailed it with that. Continuing though, where he talks about her, he's talking about here La Lega and Forza Italia. These are two. La Lega is headed by Matteo Salvini, who was sort of the last great conservative hope for Italy. He did a good job with migration when he was a deputy prime minister, I think in 2018. And Forza Italia, which was run by Silvio Berlusconi, who was the prime minister for many years. If there could be an Italian version of a Rhino, Republican in name only, sort of old school, mainstream Republican Party, think George Bush type, that would be Forza Italia. It's conservative in the fact that, it's basically about finances, but really morally kind of a degenerate. In any case, they allied with Giorgia Meloni. So she received 26% of the vote. They received about 18 total. And then it was combined for this right-wing coalition, which was smart on their behalf. But in any case, it says Lega and Forza have had a significant hemorrhage of voters, in my opinion, motivated by the prostration of their leaders and key figures on the pandemic narrative and the Ukrainian crisis. This is true. Matteo Salvini and Silvio Berlusconi decided to obey the European Union, the World Health Organization, NATO, and the diktats of their World Economic Forum, puppet masters. This is true. An evil choice, as we have seen, which has been severely punished at the polls, but which remains largely shared also by Giorgia Meloni, who is a member of the Aspen Institute, which is part of the Rockefeller Foundation. It is openly Atlanticist and pro-European. And I'm going to, if I could, offer a little bit of context for that. It is not my opinion that membership in an organization constitutes someone believing in the tenets thereof. I'll give you an example. Many people are part of alumni organizations for the universities, but they don't agree with the alumni association. And in fact, they go to the meetings to push back against them. There are people who are part of Rotary Foundation who have been disenfranchised with the direction of Rotary. Members of Knights of Columbus who don't really want to go the direction of the sort of woke social justice Catholicism that the Knights seem to be pushing now. Maxime Bernier, who is one of the more premier populist political actors here in Canada, is a massive opponent of the World Economic Forum, but he attended Davos years ago as a delegate from the Canadian government when he was a member of parliament. I mean, the one way of looking at this is, listen, if you are a police officer, if you want to keep an eye on what the criminals are doing, you go and see what they're doing. That's a possibility. On the other hand, it could be that she is not as thoroughly right-wing as people believe she is. It could also mean a combination of many things. The European Union question is extremely difficult for Italians. The European Union represents something like the ghost of the Holy Roman Empire. And unity amongst Europeans is a very precarious thing. And mobility between countries, a shared economic history is also very important to them. But there's always been this undulation back and forth where you have sort of this European hegemony in certain ways, but at the same time maintaining national identity. It's a very difficult balance without the church, which is why you see the rise of, Benito Mussolini in the 20s and 30s in Italy. I mean, he was very much, in a way, very pro-European hegemony, but he wanted Italy to be the big dog, which was sort of a vestige of the Roman Empire. But he didn't have the faith all the way through, so he couldn't do it in the right way, and obviously gave into excesses of violence and so forth. Since then, Pope Paul VI, for example, had supported the European Union as a pope in the 1960s, because, again, in this post-Christendom age, understanding this European question is very hard to do. It's easy for me as an expat, someone who doesn't live there, but, has citizenship. It's easy for me to think I should be beating my chest and saying anyone who does anything with the euro is totally selling out Italy. The reality is that if Italy were to pull out of when England pulled out of the European Union, they had their own currency. That's a big deal. Italy is on the euro. For all the faults of the euro, it's a very valuable currency. It's usually in parallel with the American dollar or even more sometimes. If Italy were to pull out of the European Union and have to go back to the lira was worth less than the Canadian dollar. And the Canadian dollar never even, it gets within 20 cents or so on a good day of the American dollar. It's not easy to consider. It's not easy. So if she's playing that delicately and trying to, on the one hand, advocate for Italy, but on the other hand, not, throw her country into economic devastation, look what happened to Slovakia when they split from the Czech Republic. It wasn't a good look. Look at what's happened in the Balkans as the various nations have split, and they've had to, they had a war, but besides that, economically, they've had to spend, places like Serbia are finally coming around, but it's been 20 or 30 years of economic devastation, essentially, and trying to recover that. This is a very serious issue, and it's not easy to sort out by just splitting from the European Union. There would have to be a lot of legwork. And in order for Italy to properly split from the European Union, if they want to, which I think they should ultimately, I'm just saying if they wanted to, I believe they would have to be in a really strong economic situation beforehand in order to even do that. They'd have to have a very strong nationalization of industry, and international nations would have to be dependent on Italian, not just European, Italian trade for many things in order to make that work. And that's a hard sell. So, okay. So there's a video going around though from Giorgia Meloni where it seems like she's supporting the digital ID. That's not good. So I'm going to actually share that, and I'm going to offer some explanation. And I think my son's going to come step in the room here for a second. So, hey, Samson, can you go finish, buddy? I'm on work. Go see your mom. Kids. Okay, I'll share this quickly here. And this is her on Twitter. And then we'll watch this together. The audio should work.
Penso ad esempio al tema del certificato verde digitale. Siamo stati i primi a sostenerlo, ci auguriamo che venga adottato il prima possibile in un orizzonte di totale reciprocità con tutti gli altri stati europei.
I'm going to share that again. I realized I forgot to press the Chrome tab, share the audio. I want to make sure that it was on. And sorry if it wasn't, but I just thought to myself, goodness, if that's not on, then we have an issue because I mean, even if you don't speak Italian, you can look at the subtitles, but nonetheless, I want to make sure that I'm sharing with the audio. So hold on a sec here. Technical glitch. Okay, the audio is on. Good. It was on, I guess. So we'll share this one more time.
È una priorità ed è fondamentale.
So
Per esempio al tema del certificato. Penso ad esempio al tema del certificato verde digitale. Siamo stati i primi a sostenerlo, ci auguriamo che venga adottato il prima possibile in un orizzonte di totale reciprocità con tutti gli altri Stati europei. È una priorità ed è fondamentale per ripristinare la libertà di circolazione e far ripartire soprattutto il turismo. Io voglio ovviamente salutare, e vado alla conclusione, i rappresentanti delle professioni sanitarie. Come sapete, Fratelli d'Italia è stata favorevole allo scudo penale per i sanitari, i medici e per tutti i vaccinatori. Penso ad esempio al
Okay, so that's a bad look of her. Sorry for that. I should.
tema del
There you go. You don't want to play a bad when someone's eyes look like that. It's not fair. Okay, was she advocating for digital ID? Here's what I'm going to say about that. For one, no, she wasn't advocating for digital ID. What she was advocating for, and she said this in there, was a horizontal. I think she used the term horizontal access or something. What she means is she was asking for access across the board for Italians to the digital green pass certificate. Now, hold on. Does this mean she's advocating for digital ID? Well, I'm going to explain this. Giorgia Meloni was not the prime minister of Italy. She was a leader of an opposition party. It was impossible to get rid of the digital green pass in Italy under Mario Draghi. This is a fact. Being anti-COVID regime was unwinnable in Italy, as that country was essentially completely gripped by the narrative. Think about what happened in early 2020. You know, it was Italy is the poster child for bad health system, not having lockdown soon enough, blah, 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 blah. You know the story. Italy was psychologically devastated by this. I know this as someone having family in Italy. It was like it's like they all have post-traumatic stress. It really has been sad. On the other hand, in European nations, if you tested negative or had tested with immunity with any test really that was approved, you were allowed to access things. Traveling, and she was talking about traveling, okay? And also having people travel to Italy. You see, the thing is, Italian economics is essentially almost completely based off of tourism outside of certain things that are produced there. Italy was destroyed if no one was going to visit Italy. And that includes Europeans. Europeans are used to working and traveling and having pleasure in different countries, like for a weekend. You know, you can drive from England to Italy within like 14 hours or something. If you go past the Channel and through sort of northeastern France, I guess from north to southeastern France. Anyway, now this is something that is very common. So in Italy, you could use the negative test, and believe me, you know I'm anti this regime, but I'm just saying, if you have a prime minister who is employing a regime that makes it impossible for you to participate in social life and makes it impossible for you to participate economically, if somebody can come forth with a solution that works within that framework, then that's something that you should embrace. I would have killed. I mean, let's be honest. If the Conservative Party of Canada had have advocated under the O'Toole leadership for something like a green pass, where you could do a $20 antigen test and show that it was negative and not have to miss your daughter's wedding or something, you know, or you know, because you get on a plane, or if you could test positive and you get 6 months of you know, access to everything. I mean, we only had the vaccine passports. Most countries only had them for about 6 to 8 months. I mean, you would have had it basically the whole time. People were able to continue to work if they tested with the green pass. You know, in the world of stupid, this was reasonable. And Giorgia Meloni is a politician. She was not the leader of the governing party. She was a leader of the opposition, and it was her job to suggest within the framework of the governing body at the time, here is an equitable plan that gives all people the access to things they love without discriminating against those. Yes, it's a pain, but this whole thing has been a pain. And the left-wing globalist government was not going to give up on the grip of the regime until it was found out that, the scandals and things like that in the Draghi party ultimately led to it, which is common in Italian politics, but that wasn't the case at the time. I would have killed for a green pass in Canada under this stupid regime, not going to lie, because we're just allowed to go back and forth across the border now without any punishments. It's been a long time. It was funny. I remember talking to my mom when she was going to visit Italian family. She said, well, it's the same over there. They have the green pass. And I said, no, Mom, if I go to Italy and I test negative, I have more rights in Italy to access things than I do in my own country of Canada. So this whole thing is stupid. But in the world of stupid, as the leader of an opposition party doing the political thing, she said, here is an option for people to access things. Don't let the good be the enemy of the perfect. If you live in a nation where you were segregated, you would have killed for a green pass because you would not have had to have missed your grandfather's funeral because you could have flown across the country. Or, you could have continued to play hockey and enter the rink because you could, goodness gracious, if you tested positive, you would have got 6 months of free access to everything. It would have basically got you through the whole time, So I think that this whole thing is stupid, but I think in the world of stupid, she offered something of a viable solution. That's the way I'm choosing to look at it. Okay. So Vigano goes on a little bit. We'll just see if he's got a little bit more to say here. I'll share that tab. He says, Giorgia Meloni is for the moment a potential prime minister. She is such for those who expect Fratelli d'Italia to be the voice of that true and motivated dissent against the entire political class. He says potential because she still has to form the government, which is normal. She is a potential prime minister for those who have decided to grant her the trust that others have repeatedly disappointed and betrayed. I should make that bigger. Excuse me. This is an irrational gesture, motivated by growing concern for the fate of the nation and by the idea that an overwhelming majority in parliament can give the new government certainty of action and make strong choices for which it will obtain support from the electorate, to which it must respond as an expression of the will of the people. She is a potential prime minister because the two preceding prime ministers were anything but leaders, since they were simply the serving boys for Ursula von der Leyen, European Union chief, and Klaus Schwab or Joe Biden. If Giorgia Meloni really wants to be prime minister in actuality and not only potentially, she must first of all stand up against those who have not been elected by anyone and yet presume the power of giving stamps of political presentability to democratically elected heads of government whenever they find themselves in various serious conflicts of interest, beginning with von der Leyen's tech messages to Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla, so on and so forth, World Economic Forum, biolabs, the whole thing. Italy is a nation that can recover, as it has always done in the past. If she learns how to recover the pride of her true identity, her true history, and her true destiny in the plans of divine providence. For decades, the Italian people have suffered as a result of decisions taken elsewhere, which have brought them nothing but damage and humiliation. The moment has come to raise our hands, to reject the disdain with resilience, the resilience that requires us to be beaten without reacting. The dystopian world of globalism must be rejected and fought against, not for our own sakes, but also for the sakes of our children, to whom each of us wishes to leave a peaceful future with solid economic prospects for raising a family, without feeling marginalized or criminalized because we do not accept resigning ourselves to the subversive plans that have been made by those who want to make us eat insects and force us into slavery, with the sole purpose of making us poor and controlling us in every aspect of our daily lives. He finishes here, but this, I say this as a pastor addressing myself in particular to Catholics, will be possible only if Italians recognize that the justice, peace, and prosperity of a nation can be obtained only where Christ reigns, where his law is observed, and where the common good is placed ahead of the personal profit and the thirst for power. Let us turn to the Lord, and the Lord will know how to reward our faithfulness. Let us turn with confidence to Mary Most Holy, our Heavenly Mother, asking her to intercede with her Son for our beloved Italy. I might shed a tear, Archbishop Vigano, as an Italian citizen, expat, and lover of, one time I had a professor ask me, he was an Italian professor, he said, Kennedy, ti sento più italiano o più canadese? Do you feel more Italian or more Canadian? I said, ascolta, professore, mi sento 100% le due. 100% italiano, 100% canadese. Non si può separare il sangue di qualcuno. You know, I feel 100% of both. My heart beats red and white, and it beats red, white, and green. It is hard to separate the love of a nation when it is your roots and ancestry, and sort of like an unconditional love, you can beat 100% of your love for all your children. You can sort of beat 100% of your love for all your patrimony, if that makes sense. I love my nation as a Canadian, and I love my history as an Italian, and I embrace them both with everything in my being. So please pray for Italy, pray for Giorgia Meloni that she might deliver on her promises. And as Archbishop Vigano said, turn to the Blessed Mother, pray rosaries for Italy. This is the home of the Catholic Church. This is the heart of Christendom. And if there is to be a new Christendom, then it must start there. Please like this video, subscribe to this channel. Click the links in the description, click the notification bell, buy my books, whatever you got to do to support the channel. Thanks to everybody who supported us. This has been the Kennedy Report. Until next time, God bless.